life, identify what you'll get the most satisfaction from. Try to find that one thing, whatever it is, and then go 100% at that.
Hear the devil calling. Hear the devil calling. Well, I hear the devil calling. Gotta pay him what he's due. I can't stop the dogs of war. I can't stop the dogs of war.
Welcome to the World's Greatest Leaders podcast. Today for the first time, we have a special guest. We have an old boss of mine. I definitely learned a lot from this guy. I'm sure you guys are gonna learn a lot from him just from listening to him talk for over an hour. It seems like a long time, but it's not that bad. But this guy is a book full of knowledge. I promise you. If whatever person that comes and talk to this man is gonna come back, learning something new. It's just a book full of knowledge. The guy's extra smart, has a lot of experience. I'm not gonna further do this. You guys will find out. So, Colonel Jones, how are you doing today, sir?
Great, thanks for having me.
No problem, sir. It's a big honor to have you here, and I appreciate you taking the time and come spend some time with us and share some experiences and some knowledge to the audience and with me. Before we head on to the start of the podcast, there's two subjects I want to hit. The first one is this morning we woke up to a base in Africa, in Kenya, that was attacked by the terrorist group Al-Shabaab, right? As of now, I don't think there was no American casualties or friendly casualties, but they found a couple of terrorists around the compound after they pushed the group back. Do you think that with all this stuff that's going on with Iran, you think that the groups are going to start thinking that we're vulnerable and going to start showing up more and trying to ambush bases and et cetera?
I don't think they'll assess us as more vulnerable. However, I do think they'll look to attack us more in response to what happened with the strike against the Iranian Major General.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I think they're just seeing us as, the Americans hit a big guy, so I think they're gonna have a lot more people with them, which I don't think that's true, but I think they're gonna have a lot of people to back them up, right? And the second thing I want to hit on is what are your take on the whole situation with Iran of the strike against the general?
I think that, to be honest, I think that was probably a long time coming. Yeah. I was happy to see that happen because I think, as you probably read, he was responsible for a lot of attacks against Americans, and he had American blood on his hands. And I feel like if you plot to kill Americans, if you kill Americans, then you're a legitimate target. And frankly, I wish he would have been killed a long time ago. So I have no issues with that, although I do think it might raise some complications.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that the people don't understand is the only thing that they hear is, Trump is starting a war. President Trump is insane. President Trump doesn't know what he's doing, and they don't get the whole reason why that happened. They just think that we just did that for fun, and it's totally not true.
I don't understand the timing of it. I don't understand why.
It was very random.
I don't understand why it wasn't done before. Like I mentioned, I mean, Iranians have been killing Americans in Iraq probably since 2005, 2006, mm-hmm. And I don't know why this action wasn't conducted back then. So the timing to me is strange, but I don't disagree with the action.
Okay, yeah, it's very sensitive, and I think people think there's a war that's going to start already, but I mean, it's very sensitive, I guess.
Well, you can certainly make an argument that there was a war already going on.
Yeah,
there were Americans dying. Iranian proxies in Iraq had killed a U.S. contractor and attacked a U.S. base with rockets.
Right, and nobody talks about that.
Right.
Everybody just talks about what President Trump is doing.
So this is just perhaps an escalation of that. So I do think there's a risk of escalation. But as I understand it, President Trump and his advisors understood that and took that into account. Again, I don't know, you and I don't know all the reasonings behind, but what I read is that additional attacks were being plotted and he was involved in those plots. So to me, he's a legitimate military target.
Right. So I grew up in Brazil. I was born in the States and I grew up in Brazil. I have a lot of friends there still, and all I open up Facebook and all I see is them talking about, oh, America wants to take Iran's petrol. America, Trump didn't like that. Iran didn't want to be their friends and want to start war. But if you look at how much stuff they did to now we react, it has nothing to do with petrol. It has nothing to do with them being our allies. It's just them being bad, and we put an end to that, right?
Yeah, I think the argument over oil makes no sense, because we were in Iraq and we took none of their oil.
Right.
We were in Germany and we took none of their resources. We were in Japan, we took none of their resources. We were in Vietnam, we took none of their resources. So I don't really understand how anyone can make that argument. It just seems, to be honest, a little silly, because there's no precedent whatsoever.
Yeah, and one person tried to hit me with, oh, well, you don't see America in Congo trying to build a democracy. And I'm like, dude, you don't know this, but America been in that whole kind of Africa for the longest.
Yeah.
Like, people just don't know about that stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have been all over the world. We've been in every continent helping those people, or at least doing our best to do that.
Right, and all right, so we're gonna leave those stuff behind. We can talk about it at a later time, right? Before we start, I think we got to get warmed up. I'm gonna hit you with some questions, something that I call the Mad Minute. I honestly took it from another podcast, so
sure. Yeah.
Team Never Quit. If you guys are listening to this, I apologize, right? But it's nothing crazy, nothing complex. I'm just gonna hit you with some questions. Some of them you probably have to put a little bit of thought in it, but I'm pretty sure you can figure it out. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. What is your favorite beer? I know it's German.
Mundschaft Kellerbier.
I knew it. Favorite superhero?
The Punisher.
Why?
Seeks justice through violence. That's what we do.
That is totally you. You just said that, and that's totally you. What was your first car ever?
1987 Ford Taurus station wagon with mag wheels.
How much you pay for it?
$500.
Did you pay for extra the wheels, or not?
I had to buy the wheels because I ran into a curb and dented so they were mismatched wheels. I ran into a curb. It was covered in snow. Bent two of the wheels, so I had to I bought the cheapest wheels I could, which were chrome American racing wheels.
How old were you when you had that car?
16.
Did you know you wanted to join the Army back then, or no?
I knew I wanted to join the military.
Okay.
I wasn't sure about the Army. My brother was a Marine. He went to the Naval Academy. My dad was in the Army. Almost every male in my family has been in the military, but it's been Marines, Army, Navy, no Air Force that I can think of. But
was the Army your first choice, or did you go see other recruiters?
West Point was my first choice because my brother's about 8 years older than me, so he had graduated from the Naval Academy and he was a Marine. He was telling me about how they have to spend time on ships, and it seemed really boring to me. Mm-hmm. So I thought the Army would be better.
Yeah. What was the hardest military school you went to?
I went to pre-scuba 4 times when I was a ranger instructor, and that was one of the hardest schools I've been to, because you almost have to change your body to do well in that course. You have to learn how to hold your breath. I went from about 210 to 185.
Damn.
Because you can't. I went to pre-scuba back to back to back. I went for 3 months straight, over and over again, and you exercise so much in pre-scuba that you can't eat enough food to replace all the calories. So you can't not lose weight, because it's probably 8 to 10 hours of exercise every day. And
are you like getting jacked up, or are you just?
No, just leaning out because you fin a lot. You do so much swimming.
No, were they instructors like just jacking you guys up?
In the pool a little bit, yeah. I mean, they do things like they charge your mask, which is where they fill your mask with water when you're doing flutter kicks. It makes the water go up your nose, so you start to choke a little bit. And then under the water, they'll mess with you when you're trying to do your tests and stuff like that.
Okay. What about Ranger School? You think Ranger School is if you would compare it to Ranger School?
Ranger School is different. Ranger School is pre-scuba is moments, days of extreme fatigue and exercise, but you're through the worst of it in about a week or two.
How long is it?
The pre-scuba I did was 2 weeks long.
Okay.
But the first week is where you do all the test and stuff, and then the second week is more training.
Mm-hmm.
So in the test week is what's hardest. It's where you have the 50-meter swim, you have underwater, you have I can't remember the exact distance. It's like a 3-mile fin in the ocean that you have to do. You have to do weighted belt swim. You have to tie knots underwater. You have to do stuff like that. Okay. So that first week is a smoker.
Okay. If you could choose to redo college, it doesn't need to be the same college you went to, any college, or redo Ranger School, what would you do?
Well, that's a hard question. I mean, college is fun. Ranger School is not that fun. So I guess I think redoing Ranger School might be more. I don't think Ranger School would be challenging right now for me. So I'd probably redo college.
Okay. If you were at an airport and an airline gave you a ticket to go anywhere in the world that you want, you can't go home and pack your bags. You can't go home and get your family if they're not with you. You just gotta go with who you are with, and just go.
I would go to Australia.
Why would you go to
I've
Australia?
never been to Australia. I've never been to that area of the world, and I think there's got to be a lot of interesting things to see and do there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you could call yourself 5 years in the future and ask any question, what would that question be?
What happened? I'm at a turning point in my time in the Army. I'll either
if you're staying in or not.
Yes. Am I staying in? Am I getting out? And what am I doing? Because and that to me all kind of shakes out in the next 5 years.
So how much longer until you, if you don't re-enlist, how much longer do you have until you get out?
So I could retire right now. I have over 20 years. It'd be 21 in May.
Okay.
I have to see if I get a brigade command or not, what kind of brigade command I do, and then basically I'll take it assignment by assignment from there.
Okay. If all jobs paid the same, what would you be working with?
Oh, I love the military.
You be in the military?
I'd be in the military.
Would you rather be like special operations or something?
I get a lot of satisfaction from doing our job in combat. I mean, it's a mixed bag because people get injured, your friends can get killed and hurt. You're exposed to danger, but there's satisfaction in doing the job. It's probably like, I'm sure it's similar for police officers.
Maybe SWAT.
Yeah, something like that. It is a dangerous job. It's a hard job. Your friends can get hurt, but there's a lot of satisfaction. So jobs that can get me in the fight, I'm happy to do.
But do you think at the rank that you are in for, do you think you're gonna have a lot of action like you had when you were a brand new lieutenant?
No, it won't. But you can help the organizations that you're in, right?
Okay.
So if you make good decisions as a leader, you keep people alive. You can get rid of the bad guys, and there's satisfaction in that.
Okay.
It's just basically moving to the next step, right? It's contributing, but in a different way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what branch or job you have, you're gonna get to a point that you're no longer be doing like combat. Like look at General Milley.
Right.
He was a 5th Group commander, entire career as a Green Beret, and now he doesn't really do combat job anymore, right?
Right. But you think of it like this. So in 1-on-1, we never ended up deploying to combat, but at some point, if you guys stay in the Army, you'll eventually go.
Absolutely.
So then what I was trying to do is get you ready for that. Like, when I leave, have I done everything I can to get you ready? And that's what I tried to do.
You could see that across the board in the unit now. Like you can tell that you can get a private and put him to be a team leader, and he will know not exactly to the perfection, but he would know basically what to do if he was a team leader. Like everybody across the board was ready to go. Yeah, at least the.
So there's satisfaction in that.
Yeah. What is one skill that you would like to have that you currently don't?
Remember I told you I went to pre-scuba all those times? I had a choice to go to scuba school, a CDQC, or go to Fort Bragg to deploy. And that was in 2004. And if I went to CDQC, it would obligate me to stay in the unit or at RTB for another year, and I'd already been there for a year. So
RTB is a Ranger Training Brigade or Battalion.
Ranger Training Brigade, and I was at 6 RTB, which is the 6th Ranger Training Battalion down in Florida.
It's in Fort Benning, right?
It's in Florida at Eglin Air Force Base.
All right.
So I had a choice to go to Bragg and deploy for the war, or go to CDQC.
What rank were you at the time?
I was a captain, and I did not want to stay at RTB for another year.
Did you already do company level commanding?
No, that was before.
So you went to Bragg to be a company commander and go to...
Yeah.
Was it... Where
it was
did you go?
OIF.
Okay.
OIF. So I never got to go to CDQC. I would have liked to have gone.
Okay.
But it was my choice not to. And I would make the same choice now because I did end up deploying. It was a, amazing, meaningful experience for me. Okay. But it would have been nice to go.
Have you ever felt invincible?
Yes.
When?
I was in Baghdad, and we'd just done a raid, and we were stuck in a 360-degree ambush. And the way that's possible is if the bad guys are on roofs shooting down at you. But I had basically a whole company in the kill zone. And
what rank were you?
I was a captain.
Okay.
And we saw the bad guys first. It was actually one of my lead gunners on a Humvee song. It was a guy named Elrod. So Elrod called them out and initiated first. So
what weapon did he have?
He had a 240.
Okay.
So that caught the bad guys off balance, and they started shooting, but it was kind of they had a low volume of fire because we had initiated on them. And my guys in the back, I had a platoon in what we called back then hunter boxes. It was a 5-ton truck with an armored box on the back, and you kind of ride in the back on bench seats. So my platoon in the back came up, and I had maybe 10 escort Humvees, give or take, and basically every weapon in the troop
was shooting,
open fire. Damn. And it looked like a porcupine of tracers going out. And
was it at night?
It was at night, and I was under NOS. I was shooting, and I was looking at the enemy bodies just basically falling off the rooftops. And I was as we were engaging with 50 cal and 240. I think we had a Mark 19. We also had 30 Mike going out from 203s. I could see these buildings crumble, and I could see the bodies of the enemy falling off the top of the buildings. And I looked around in the middle of this. I shot a magazine, and I looked around the middle of this firefight and seeing the porcupine of tracers going out. And I felt like seeing what my company was capable of. I felt almost invincible.
That is pretty badass. That is pretty badass. You lose anybody in that engagement or no? No, we didn't. It was amazing. Everybody felt invincible.
My Humvee was all shot up. Like I think 2 of my wheels were shot out. There was bullet holes in my windshield. I had an RPG hit a wall right next to me and like blew me sideways, but I didn't have a scratch on me. I just wrenched my back, and no one got wounded or hurt in that. It was kind of amazing. It's amazing that no one got hurt, which also made it a good
absolutely
event.
What is your greatest failure in life?
When I was leaving the 82nd at company command, after company command, I had a choice to make. I got offered a number of different jobs. There were a number of different opportunities open to me. One of them was to go to grad school and teach at West Point. And then there were a lot of other good jobs that were open. And as I was waiting to leave, as I was trying to figure out what to do, I had been in command for 27 or 28 months, and my battalion commander came and said that I had been in command long enough and it was time for me to go. And I was in Iraq. He said I would have to go to brigade staff while I was deployed, and I had been a troop commander and company commander at that point, like I said, for about 28 months, give or take a month. And I did not want to be on brigade staff in Iraq. I just couldn't think of it. I'd been in the fight at that point for about a year, deployed, and we had been heavy in the fight. And the thought of sitting in the brigade headquarters,
boring.
I just couldn't stand it. I couldn't
Because
take it.
you think you couldn't help your guys, or what?
I couldn't help, and I felt like, I don't know why. I was young, and I just couldn't think of it. I couldn't consider it. The thing that got me out of that was if I went to grad school. I would go redeploy, go back to the U.S., go to grad school, and then go teach at West Point. And I did not want to go to brigade staff so much that I went to grad school and taught at West Point. But I don't know if I would do it again, because what it did is it took me out of the fight. I could no longer, some of my guys got killed after I left. I was basically couldn't deploy for the next 4 years because I was either in grad school or teaching. And I felt like I couldn't contribute. And it was difficult for me. I didn't like that. I didn't join the Army to go to grad school and teach, especially not during a time of war.
So do you regret teaching at West Point or no?
I do, but only for that time period. For example, if there was no war going on, it wouldn't have bothered me. But because there was a war going on, I felt like I needed to contribute, and I didn't feel that I could contribute as much from West Point and grad school as I could in the fight. So I don't think that's a failure, but that's a decision that I made when I was young, and I probably didn't understand, and I don't know if I would do it again. It's not that I dislike teaching or dislike West Point, because it was a great experience. It was not being able to contribute.
I understand that. I know you like to run.
I do.
So if you could go conduct a 5-mile run anywhere in the world, is there in Japan, on the Great Wall of China, or in Rio, going up the mountain with the Christ the Redeemer on top, wherever you want, where would you go?
I like running in nature the most.
Okay.
And I've run, of course, pretty much all over the world. I've run in Africa, I've run in Europe, in the U.S., in the Caribbean, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. I think mountain runs are the best. And I like the mountain runs where there's a lot of scenery to look at. So I guess I would pick probably somewhere in the Alps. You know, if I had to pick the best possible place to run. But to be honest, I like running almost anywhere. I tell you where I don't like to run. I don't like to run in cities at all. I don't like the air, and I don't like dodging cars. I don't like that at all. I
seen when I was in Amsterdam over this past leave, it was super crowded over there on the main road, and I see some dude running, and he's just getting mad and frustrated for all the tourists there. I'm like, dude, you're running on the wrong spot, man.
Yeah. I try not to run in cities ever.
Who could win a fight to death, Lieutenant Colonel Jones in 2020, or brand new Lieutenant Jones in 99?
Probably now, because when I graduated from West Point, when I first started the Army, I think there was still a lot of softness, right? You're not used to the hard life. Now, probably Major Jones would win against Lieutenant Colonel Jones, but Lieutenant Colonel Jones would win against.
You're into boxing and stuff, right?
I used to fight MMA.
Okay.
I fought MMA for 18 months when I was at grad school. And my grandfather was a boxer. My brother was a boxer.
I remember a story you told me where you like fucked up your nose one time.
Oh yeah, I had nose surgery probably 3 years ago. I couldn't breathe out of my nose very well. Opened it up.
If you were president for a day and you had the power to pass anything through Congress and it would immediately get approved, it could be anything, what would you pass?
I would get us to a balanced budget. I worry that we're creating such a deficit. You can imagine we have a credit card and we're maxing out our credit card, and our kids and our kids' kids are going to have to pay it. And that's my biggest worry for the country. We just have to, either we have to tax more or we have to spend less, or some combination of the two.
Okay, so every president that comes in, they worry about that. But what I'm trying to ask is, what is a law that you would create?
I would create a law that says until we have a balanced budget, we're going to increase tax by 1% and decrease spending by 1%.
Okay.
Until they meet.
All right. If you could, this kind of hit a question that we hit before. I don't know if your answer's going to be the same, but if you could go back to anywhere in time and do something different, when would it be and where?
I would do either. There's two options. One option would be just start in high school and redo it all, because throughout my life there's decisions I would change if I could. Now, if what's to go back, there's that one decision I made to go commit myself to 2 years of grad school and 2 years at West Point,
Yes.
which 4 years. That would be the decision, the single decision I would change. However, if I went back to high school, like I remember I dislocated my shoulder in a football game. I remember that football game.
What position you played in football?
I played fullback and linebacker, but I ended up getting hurt playing nose guard. I played nose guard for like half a season.
Do you have like a favorite NFL team or a college team?
Well, of course I went to West Point, so I like Army, the Army football team. My wife went to Tennessee, so I like the Tennessee Vols. I also went to Duke, so I don't mind Duke. For professional football, I don't really have a team. I guess I'd root for the Titans.
I absolutely hate the Titans right now.
Yeah. Oh, because they beat the. Are you a Patriots fan?
Yes, I'm definitely a Patriots fan.
That's right. Yeah, I heard about that.
That got me very upset. But I'm also upset at the Patriots for playing like trash, right? All right, this is gonna finish up our Mad Minute that actually went 25 minutes. I try to keep it as low as possible. When I had Andre on, it was 5 minutes, but when I had Max, it was like 17 minutes. So I think you're in the front right now.
Sorry, I'm talking too much.
It's fine. But what is the best piece of advice you can give to someone?
Best piece of advice is to, for your life, identify what you'll get the most satisfaction from. Like, try to find that one thing, whatever it is, and then go 100% at that. So whatever it's going to be, whether it's computer programming, football player, soccer player, baseball player, Army person, Navy, whatever, identify what you get the most satisfaction from and give that 100%.
For the people that are listening right now, right? Lots of them come listen to this podcast when they're struggling with some decisions to make. If they're lacking motivation, if they're going through some problems at work or whatever it is. And I know by working under you, I know that you always praise being mentally and physically tough. And you used to beat that down on us a lot, like 18-mile ruck marches, going hard for PT, putting us in situations where we would think that damn, this sucks, but I need to finish this because I have to, right? If I don't finish this right now, I'm not going to finish this when I'm deployed in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever. So this is for the people to put someone that's listening on the path to gain that mental and physical readiness, and to put someone in that path. What is someone that you can tell that person to show them that the body has a much bigger limit that you think, and it's all in control of your mind, to show them to, if you just get your mind right, to keep pushing? What is something that you would tell that person to just keep going?
It's important. I do feel any kind of fighting, martial arts, combat, it comes down, there's a part of it that's a battle of wills, right? You're fighting against someone else. You could think of a wrestling match, right? So if you go 100% in a wrestling match against somebody who's going 75%, maybe you get them in a bad position and they could either give up or they could try to fight through it. But sometimes, you might be smoked, you might be tired. It could be easier to quit, right? If you're tired, you're smoked, the other guy's better than you, he's got you in a bad position, you can fight hard to try to get out of it, or you could just quit and submit and it's over and the physical pain is done. So in something like a wrestling match, that just means you lose a wrestling match. But in something like combat, you could be dead, and it's not just you who could be dead.
Or your buddy can be dead.
Your buddy could be dead.
You gotta live with that shit.
And I've seen that happen. I've seen people quit in combat. I've seen people go down who didn't need to go down. And so that's why I think it's so important to be tough. Now, how to be tough? You have to continue to push your limits. You can't. Toughness doesn't just magically happen, and you can't think that, well, in combat when I need to be tough I will, because
That's not gonna happen.
It's just like a wrestling match. You might just say, you know what, it's too hard, I'm just gonna quit. And you have to build that toughness in. And I know how this is because I've lived it through my life. I remember I played football in high school, and I remember thinking I was tough coming out of that. And I went to West Point. I found out I wasn't as tough as I thought I was, right? Because some of that was hard for me. I graduated West Point and thought I was tough from that. I'd been through West Point. I went to Ranger School, and that was hard for me. And
did you go Ranger School right after West Point?
Pretty much. I graduated West Point in June of 99 and went to Ranger School in November 99. I did OBC in the middle. And then, so I finished Ranger School. I thought I was hard then. Then I went to a unit, and that wasn't that hard. But then I went back as a Ranger instructor, and I thought I had some hard times there.
So you were a Ranger instructor before you got deployed the first time, or no?
I went to Kosovo from Campbell, if you count that as a deployment. Then I went back to be a Ranger instructor. I did that, and I thought, I was tough coming out of that. That's when I did pre-scuba so many times. I did it 3 or 4 times. I thought I was hard coming out of that. I went to Bragg and I went to combat, and combat is hard. It's hard. It's hard physically, walking in 120-degree heat with all your kit on. It's hard when the people you care about get hurt or die. It's hard when you have to go with no sleep. It's hard to always be alert. It's hard to always pull security. All these things are hard. So you finish combat and you think, well, now I'm a combat veteran. That's hard. But there's different degrees of that. And then, so you continue going through life and you realize there's still more that your body can do if you have the toughness physically and mentally to do it. And if combat is a battle of wills and a battle of how hard you can fight, when are you or when is a unit ever perfectly prepared? And the answer that from my experience is you're never perfectly prepared. You just do the best you can to be as ready as you can, because that's how you're going to win and that's how you're going to bring people home.
Okay. Yeah, and I think you mentioned on somebody's like, yeah, I'll be ready for combat the day it comes. It's definitely not how it works. You're gonna get there and you're gonna be annoyed. You're gonna be sucking. You're gonna be tired. You're gonna be hot, or you're gonna be cold. And like you said, if you can't quit there. You can give up, but if you give up, you're just putting everybody else in danger and yourself.
Right.
So almost 21 years of experience. You probably had a lot of different commanders over you, regardless if that's a troop commander, squadron commander, whatever. Do you think that your leadership approach, compared to the previous units you've been in, the previous unit commanders and the previous units that you commanded, do you think it had changed along the way, or you stick with the one and you kept going with the same one?
It's absolutely. My leadership has changed. It even changed in 191 when I was in 191, and it changed.
Can you talk about that, like how?
Yeah, it did change. My one of my biggest lessons learned from my time in 191 is that I tell people now even is I feel like I didn't communicate enough to everybody really throughout, but I communicated more over time, but I wish I would have communicated more. I don't
like being more close to the soldiers and talking more with them and stuff like that, or just explaining why you making your decisions.
Yeah, specifically explaining why, because for example, I knew why I felt that 18-milers were so important as one example, but I don't think I did a good job, or I don't think I explained it enough. And the reason I didn't is, in one hand, I felt like, I'm going to tell you to do it, you're going to do it. I know it's for the best, so we're just going to do it. Kind of like a dad and a kid, right? Don't question the decision, just trust me and do it.
Okay, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but sometimes you just need to do that because being in the unit and the first time you hear, hey, we're going to do that first 18-miler, and I'm like, damn, whose decision is this? But then you realize, well, can I go to combat right now and ruck 18 miles with 65 pounds on 110-degree weather? But some people don't understand that. Like I don't want to give crap on the support messages, but they're the majority of the people that are like, damn, I don't want to do this. Oh, I'm just a mechanic, or I'm just a cook. I'm never gonna do this in combat. And sometimes there's people just let that go into their head, and it just affects everybody else. Cause yeah, go ahead.
The yeah, with the 18 milers and the mechanics, there's a couple reasons. There's a whole lot to explain that. One is I didn't want the support guys to not be a part of the unit. I feel like it should be a unit thing, so everybody should do it. Mm-hmm. From the S1 clerk to the mechanic, everybody should do it because we're all on one team. It's like one family. That was one reason. The other thing is the 18 milers is not just about rucking. In fact, that's just one aspect of it. It's another aspect. It's in my opinion, it's building toughness and confidence.
It goes back to being mentally and physically tough.
Right. And it's a mechanism to do that, and it's, to be honest, it's one of the best mechanisms I know because it's hard. It's not that hard to quit. You can quit. It's not that hard to do, but it seems hard. Mm-hmm. So to me, that was the best possible thing. However, I think I could have done for example, with that, I could have done a better job explaining the rationale behind that, and that was probably that applied to everything, was my biggest lesson learned, and how I will be different in the future if I'm a commander. I will try to whenever possible, if it's a controversial decision or one that people may not understand, I'll do my best to explain it.
Yeah, I mean the 18 milers did suck, but at the end of it, you're like, I feel good right now. Well, yeah. I'm sore, but I feel good that I just rucked 18 miles with all this weight on my back, and it's hot as balls, and I feel good. It's one at that time I'm like, oh, I feel invincible. You feel invincible for like 5 minutes after you finish it.
Yeah.
Then you go back to reality, but it was good, the feeling of finishing it. I want to get a little bit into doctrine, right? Especially with someone like you, where you experienced one before and after the GWAT started, the OIF and OAF and all that stuff. If you compared to when you first joined the Army, with how the training was and all that stuff, were you big in using doctrine for training?
Yeah. Yes. So I was a captain. No, that's not true. I was a first lieutenant when on 9/11. Mm-hmm. I was a company XO. So I'd been a rifle platoon leader for about 11 months or so, and then maybe 9 to 11 months. It's been a while. I was a rifle platoon leader at the 101st, and then I became a company XO, and I was a company XO for a little bit over a year. And during that, as a company XO, we ended up deploying to Kosovo for Joint Guardian. So as a rifle platoon leader, we had not deployed. We were just training in the rear. And then as a company XO, I ended up deploying for Kosovo, which was like peacekeeping, not combat. So I only have the perspective really from before the global war on terror as a platoon leader. But I do remember we did use doctrine. We had 7-8, which was the infantry platoon manual, and I carried it around in my rucksack, and I referenced it on all the stuff we did. Like we had to knock at a bunker, or we're going to do an attack. I would look through the manual and make sure what I was doing was based on that. And then when we would do large field problems, like a brigade field problem or a battalion field problem, it was the same. Everyone was trying to base that in doctrine.
Right, but do you ever get to a point you read through the doctrine, you're like, this doesn't make sense? You ever get to that point?
I think here's my thoughts on doctrine. Doctrine is always a guide, and I try to. I will sometimes deviate from doctrine. Like in 191, we would deviate from doctrine from time to time. But I think you should never deviate from doctrine because you're ignorant of it. You should deviate because you've made a choice that...
As a leader. Yeah,
as a leader. And so I know doctrine says to do it this way, but due to these unique circumstances, I'm going to deviate from that and do it a different way. For example, what C Troop will do. C Troop can fight as infantry if they have to, or they can be employed as LURS. So how do you employ C Troop? It really depends on the circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I would deviate from doctrine in terms of how I would employ C Troop, depending on the conditions, as an example. And the other thing is whether you're going to fight for information or not, for the mounted troops.
So, just going back in doctrine, right? A lot of times when you're doing training and you go into doctrine, and example when the first global war on terrorism started, I don't really think that we were that familiar with how to clear a room, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm pretty sure the doctrine hasn't changed since then, since before that. So today, you have all those different ways in clearing rooms and patrolling and all that stuff, which a lot of people like to reference the special operators, which is kind of like the cool guy way to enter. And doing some live fires under you would really go back to doctrine when we were doing room clearing. Would be there a reason for that, or what? Or did you think it was the right way to do it, or you just didn't agree with how we would do it?
So there are lots of different room clearing techniques. Like there's, for example, the FBI uses a big shield, or at least I think they do, and a lot of law enforcement will use a big shield. So the lead of the stack, the guy has a big shield, and he puts his pistol around the corner of the shield. So that's one technique of how you're going to move up to whatever the breach point is, or the door, or whatever. And then I know really, say maybe in the 80s, one of the techniques for clearing a room is you threw frags in every room, like a frag grenade. The obvious issue with the frag grenade is whatever's inside is going to get wounded. So if there's civilians in there, it's an issue. If you look at, say, like Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan, you'll see them throwing a lot of frags in the buildings. We don't do that as much anymore because it's indiscriminate.
You'll see them throwing flashbangs and stuff.
Right, flashbangs, but not as much frags. So there's basically lots of different techniques to enter a building and clear room. And I learned this in a previous job. We had different types of special operations forces, and every person had a slightly different take. For example, when you're entering the door, do you pie off the room from outside the room? That's one technique. Or do you, as soon as you open the door, do you enter to try to get your points of domination? And I've been in these multinational and joint task forces where that everyone wants to debate on how to do mount, and then eventually you come to some kind of consensus on how you're going to do it. When I was in command, I didn't necessarily want to get into those long debates with, say, A troop deciding they want to do it this way, B troop deciding they want to do it this way, C troop deciding something else. Rather than that, just let's stick with the basics to get to a basic level of proficiency. And should we go to combat in an urban environment, then we'll fine tune all of the, like every element will fine tune how they're going to do mount.
So the whole squadron would have an SOP, and
right.
The troops and the slash platoons would come up with their own SOP if we ever went to combat and stuff like that. Right?
I think you would iron out those details. Like I said, for example,
it's like adapting to the situation.
Right. You'll adapt to the situation and to the individuals, which will happen anywhere. Anywhere you're going to have to know you're going to have to dial in the specifics of, for example, are you going to blow the door, or are you going to mechanically breach it? Are you going to ballistically breach it? There's all these different options, and the units will sort those out as you go. But what I wanted to do was just build a basic, and because we're just building a basic base, I wanted it to be the same so that someone from Anvil could go into a stack in Charlie or in Comanche and fit in.
Yeah, that's understandable. And when that happened, I was one of the persons like, why are we doing it this way?
Yeah.
Right. And it like goes back to what you said. Like, we wish you did better. Just explaining the situation. It's a lot clearer now, right? I mean, if someone doesn't want to agree with it, don't agree with it. But now you understand the reason why.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. That's my biggest lesson from command is, and many times I did not explain things as well as I should have.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that like your exposure to combat and you being in combat and seeing other younger soldiers in combat make decisions. Do you think that all that stuff got you prepared to make decisions as a leader today, and even when you get out of the military?
Yeah, absolutely. Because those are obviously critical decisions. Decisions made in combat, they have life-changing effects.
You're not going to be doing battle drill 1 alpha on someone when you're in civilian working at a bank or whatever.
Right, and it's so those are, I definitely think it helps you. They're important decisions that you do your absolute best to make the right decisions, and so it will help. It helps, I think, make any decisions going forward, and I also think it helps make military decisions, of course, because you have that perspective.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, you're not going to be doing a react contact when you're working at a bank, but yeah, it helps you make quick decisions on times that you need to be quick, and like I don't know, it's hard to explain to someone that isn't in the Army, right?
Yeah.
You just that sense of always being ready, always being prepared to whatever's going to happen. What advice would you give to a new non-commissioned officer, that brand new sergeant or that brand new lieutenant showing up to the unit, in how to be a better leader?
I think my best advice is you have to prepare yourself and your guys, your subordinates, for war. And why is that? Because if you go to war and someone dies, you don't want it to be because you didn't do the best you could to prepare them. And I think that's my advice. And that's kind of the perspective I was talking about for the last question, is until you've been to war, it's hard to, I think it's very difficult to imagine what it's like to go to one of your guy's funerals or talk to his wife or talk to his kids who've lost their father. But when you're doing that, you don't want to think that it was because you made a bad decision or you didn't get them ready. You didn't do all you could to get them ready. So That's what I would tell them. That's my advice.
As an officer, you're in charge. You're in charge of most of anything from when you get to a unit as a lieutenant to when you retire, right? Like when you're a lieutenant, you're in charge of your platoon.
Yeah.
Then in charge of your company / battery / troop. And you're always in charge, and you're gonna have subordinates under you that are leaders, right? You're gonna have sergeant first classes, staff sergeants, specialist promotables. You can have all kinds of leaders under you. Sometimes you're gonna have leaders under you that have more experience than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or not. I don't want to say experience like he knows more, but I want experience on the ground, more time in the Army than you. Right. How do you feel on that, and what do you really expect from those leaders that have more time in you, but they know that you're the boss, but they have more time in you, and sometimes they can be like, oh, what does he know? He been armed for 3 years, whatever.
Well, I think as a leader, you have to be confident in understanding you don't always know everything, and certainly I know that, and so I would expect someone with more experience than me to give me good advice, and to be willing to discuss different options. For example, I've never been in a mechanized unit. I've trained with them, as you know. I've fought with them a little bit, right, in combat and in training environments, but I've never been mechanized. So if I were to go, let's say theoretically, I've got to go to I get a mechanized brigade command somehow, then I would need advice. I would need advice from all of them. From everybody below me would have more experience when I showed up in a mechanized unit than I would, and I would need good advice from them. So that's what I would expect from subordinates who have more experience or knowledge on something. I'd expect good advice and then also support, of course, right? So we'll debate on what we're gonna do, right? Let's say I get to the mechanized brigade and our maintenance is terrible, and I'm pushing PT all the time. Mm-hmm. Like we don't have enough time to work on the vehicles or something. Then I would expect good advice on how to adjust our priorities so that we're doing enough maintenance. And then also, if once you make a decision as a leader, then after we've had that discussion on what we're going to do, then I would expect someone to support me on whatever the decision was.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that. I think that we have lots of sergeants today that they guess like, oh, that guy is in charge, that guy is a captain, that guy is a lieutenant colonel or whatever that rank is. He outranks me, so I'm not gonna say nothing. He's making a decision, and I'm just gonna sit here and just push it down. And I don't think that's the right call. Like if you think tactfully, obviously, if you think that something isn't right, or you think that person doesn't know what's going on, or that is not making the right call, it's the best option. Like I said, tactfully, is to approach that person and talk to them and say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way instead of like this, right? Or why is it this way? And I think especially as an NCO, you can't be scared of just talking to someone just because that person is higher ranking than you, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So if I'm working for someone, I don't agree with the decision, I think through a couple things. One is, is it significant enough that I need to talk to them about it? For example, let's say, just a silly example, Colonel Jones, go take your trash out right now. Like, well, I'm in the middle of doing something. I'd rather do it later, but is it worth approaching them about that? No, I just take it out and fine. It's not a big deal. But
I don't think nobody's gonna come up to Colonel and like take the trash out. But all right,
that's a good example. You know what I mean, like if it's not that big of a deal where it's not going to have any real consequence, you can just roll with it. Mm-hmm. However, if it is going to have a big consequence and you don't agree, then I think you absolutely have a moral obligation to go talk to the person. You not only should you almost must. Mm-hmm. You must talk to that person and at least give them tactfully, like you said, give them your advice. Because what if that has significant consequences and you've seen how it's going to go wrong, then not saying anything is not the right thing to do.
It's the worst thing is doing something without knowing why, right? Yeah. And knowing why that person didn't make the right call, or in your head that person didn't make the right call, or why didn't that person think of this? It's horrible. It sucks, right?
Yeah.
What was the hardest decision that you made as a leader through your time in the Army? It's something that you really had to put a lot of thought into it.
I think the hardest decisions are always, in my experience, are always the decisions that affect people's lives, and so if you are going to change someone's life, those decisions are the hardest. For example, with UCMJ, and are you going to separate somebody? Are you going to take their money? Are you going to give someone this?
He doesn't really mean take their money. He like take pay. Like,
take pay as a result of UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, mm-hmm. or put someone on restriction, or send someone's family home. I mean, those decisions that affect people's lives like that, those are all those are hard decisions. And I can think of many that are hard. And what you're trying to do is balance justice. What is the right thing for the right outcome, and also humility and understanding and empathy for that person and their circumstances. Those are I find are the hardest decisions.
As a young officer still in the process of learning, like you don't graduate West Point, like in your situation, knowing how to exactly be an officer, right? But who was someone that had the most influence in you when you started learning, when you were growing up in your career, that to this day sticks with you?
Well, I think first thing I'll say is you're always learning. And you never know all the answers. For example, I learned a lot of lessons in Squadron Command. And at that point, when I first took command, I'd probably been in the Army 18 years at that point. So you're always learning. And I still learn. I learn every day. So that never ends. As this person who had the single most greatest impact on me, I don't know if I could even pick one person.
It can be someone that just had a really big impact. Doesn't mean the biggest one.
I think one of the most competent officers I worked with tactically is this guy named Pat Work. He's a colonel now. I think he's going to be a full colonel. I think he's going to be a general. I'm pretty sure.
Where is he at right now?
Now he's at the Pentagon, working on something. However, he was my battalion S3 when I was a troop commander on my first deployment to combat, and he was, in my opinion, he was gifted tactically. We had very good orders and very good missions, and the whole process for preparing and executing the mission was really good. And I think I probably learned the most from him.
Do you still have some kind of relationship with him or no?
I not obviously not as much as I did before. I probably email back and forth with him maybe a couple times a year, and I talk to him on the phone maybe once a year or so. I talked to him just a few months ago when I needed some advice. So I still go to him for advice, but I go to other people too. For example, I also learned a lot from Colonel Bartholomew's. I learned a lot from even the people who work for me.
He's a beast.
Yeah, Colonel
He's a complete beast. And he has I'm extremely jealous of his resume.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I not only do I learn from senior people, I also learn from subordinate people. For example, I learned a lot from the majors, and I learned a lot from Sergeant Major Franco and Sergeant Major Fedorsen. So I don't think you ever stop learning.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, and some people don't really understand that. They just think, like, I think some people like to compare learning and knowledge with rank.
Yeah, no.
Like, I'm a sergeant first class, I know everything, and I don't need to know anything else. I'm like, that's definitely not the right answer.
Yeah,
you definitely need to learn a lot.
You always have to keep evolving.
What is your key to success to be the best leader that you can?
Well, I think probably what we just talked about. You have to always learn. Everything you do, you critically evaluate. You think what went well, what could have gone better, and then you keep doing the things that went well, and you work on the things that didn't go well. And I think that's probably the most important. And you obviously try. You have to try, and you have to keep learning.
Absolutely. Can you think about doesn't need to be the toughest day, but probably one of the most toughest day in your career?
It's hard to say. I mean, so days have been tough for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they can be tough physically. Sometimes they can be tough mentally. Sometimes they can be a combination of the two. So it's hard to say. I would think. I remember a mission in Iraq that we did when I was a troop commander, and it was towards the beginning of the deployment. It was really hot. I think the air temperature was 120 something, and then with the heat index, because it was humid, it was in the Tigris River Valley, it was over 130. And that was extremely hard. We had 2 days of supplies. We had a lot of ammunition. We need a lot of water from that heat, and that was extremely difficult. We ended up having a lot of heat casualties that we had to evacuate, and we had to secure ourselves. So it was stressful in trying to keep security of the troop, take care of the people who were going down from heat, and then physically it was hard as well, moving around in that heat with all that equipment. So that was a difficult day.
Okay. And it goes all the way back to when the first thing we started is just that being mentally and physically tough thing.
Yeah.
There's no preparing for it. You just got to be as most ready as you can. You're not going to be. Have you ever thought about doing anything like SFAS, RASP, now with the new SFAB?
Well, now, so that ship has sailed for me mostly, meaning
you can't do none of them. No
yeah,
more.
I'm too.
But when you were younger, would you ever think about it?
I thought about more recently. I did think about the SFAB because they were obviously recruiting for the SFAB. I thought about it long and hard, but I think going back to what I said before, what I talked about before, I do get a lot of satisfaction out of our Army fighting job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, training people to do that and doing that and being ready to do that. And I did not think I would get the same satisfaction from training Afghans, for example, or training Iraqis. That, like, if I was going to train, I'd rather train U.S. soldiers. And if I can, I'd rather lead U.S. soldiers, to do. That's what I joined the Army to do. It's sort of like teaching. It's not that I didn't like teaching. It's just not the primary reason I joined the Army. So that's why I didn't do SFAB. For self units, I have done some work in the special operations community, and I have done that, and I did enjoy that.
Okay, so I mean, as long when I understand from talking to you, I understand that you're a dude that you like kicking down doors. Like, you like kicking down doors, shooting them in the face, and making sure your guys are trained and good to go, right?
Yeah, kind of. It's satisfying. It's satisfying. It's serving something bigger than yourself in a challenging and exciting profession.
So my time working for you, I got a big vibe that you are a guy that would really fit into Ranger Bat. Like, those guys are professional to the T. The guys they're really good at their job, and they're really good at just straight up door kicking. Have you ever thought about going to regiment?
Yeah, I submitted it. Remember, I said I went to Kosovo after my PL time. So after my PL time, I put together a packet, and back then it was called ROPE, was the officer tryout for a regiment, and now it's called a RASP. But at any rate, I had trained with 375 when I was at Campbell. We did some training events with them, and they had indicated that they'd like to hire me. I just needed to go to ROPE. So I put together a packet, and part of the packet
Did they, I'm sorry to cut you, but did they ever say why did they like you for the job, or?
Well, I had trained with them, and I think they were.
Like, do you think that you did anything to, like, put yourself out there? Like, you were a beast at physical fitness, or you were good at doing this, whatever?
I think probably all of it. I mean, I think I did a good job supporting them. We had gone with them to do some mount training at Knox, and we were playing Op 4. But I put my guys through with them, and of course I was in charge of the Op 4, and they seemed to be happy with how my platoon had done supporting them. So they said to put my packet in, and they indicated they'd be interested in hiring me. So that was probably in about August or so of 2000, and after that we went to NTC. The whole brigade did. I think that was probably around November of 2000. And then when we came back, I was about to put my packet in. It was towards the end of 2000. But that's when the battalion was supposed to go to Kosovo. And I had moved from being a PL to a Company XO, and my battalion commander told me that I was too important, and that Kosovo was a real mission, whereas going to Ranger Regiment would just be training, and I could not go. So he would not.
So it was up to him.
Yeah, it was up to my.
I think today they can't. Your command can't say no. I know for SFAS, if the recruiters recruit you to go for the selection, your command can't say no.
Yeah, I don't know the details. I don't think they can either. But at any rate, he wouldn't let me go. So I didn't go. I went to Kosovo. I was in Kosovo from probably something like March of 2001 until November, December of 2001. And then when I came back, he said, well, you're back. We're back now. You can go. And when I talked to regiment then, they said I was too senior, meaning it was too late. I was about to be a captain. And
oh, okay.
So I didn't go then. Then when I left, I told you I chose to go to grad school after company command, and that didn't allow me to pursue any other jobs. One of the jobs that I could have pursued was going to regiment, but like I said, I did not want to go to brigade staff, so I chose to go to grad school, which, as I mentioned, in hindsight, I don't know if I would do that again.
It's been great having you on here, and we're fortunate to get into our last question, right? So I believe that leadership is spoke a lot. We talk a lot about leadership, but I don't think it's talked enough, right? And I think one of the, like I said in the beginning, one of the reasons that people that listen to this podcast, or the people at least I'm targeting for this podcast, is to people that are on that struggle. They're leaders that are struggling in making a leadership call, or they're about to be leaders, like myself. I'm especially promotable, and I'm almost about to be a sergeant, right? But what is a message or a story that you have to the listeners to help them face whatever they're going on right now, or whatever difficulty they are going through to accomplish one of their objectives or goals?
Well, I mean, it could be my personality, but usually if I have a goal, like let's say you want to go to SFAS, right, and pass SFAS. So you should look at, my advice to you would be, you look at everything that you have to do that's associated with that. Like there's probably some kind of like GT score test. There's an obstacle course probably. There's some kind of foot march. There's land nav. There's leadership. There's whatever else is involved. And then you look at those requirements and you figure out where you are in each of those. Like let's say your GT score is already through the roof, like it's whatever the highest score is, 180, then you don't need to worry about that. But let's say your PT is terrible and you're worried about the obstacle course and the foot march and whatever, then you've got to make a plan to address those weaknesses. Let's say you're good on GT score, you're good on PT, but your land nav is terrible. But then you got to figure out how you're going to get better at land nav. And then you figure out, so you put a mark on the wall for this is when I need to be ready, and then make a plan on how you're going to get to that, how you're going to get that done. And then do all you can to get it. So for example, if your land nav is bad, believe it or not, they have land nav video games. So get the land nav video game. There's books on land nav. You could just go practice land nav on your own in the woods, right? So there's different ways to do it, but figure out what you need to do, and then make a plan that will get you there. Execute the plan, assess where you are, and keep doing that. That'd be my advice.
So find a problem, assess the problem, and work the problem, right?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, this is the end of the show. I really appreciate you coming on and spend some time with me so we can talk about all kinds of stuff. I think I learned more in this an hour and a half of talking with you than I ever learned talking to anybody else, right? It's a great experience, and I really appreciate you coming on and spend some time with me and sharing your experiences with the guests and on how they can become bigger leaders.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, sir. All right, leaders, this concludes today's episode. I really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. I really appreciate you guys sending some feedback and sending some support to the show. Remember, leadership is talked about a lot, but not enough. Stay humble and stay hungry, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
I can't stop the dogs of war. See the fields burning. See the fields burning. Well, I see the fields burning, 'cause hell is coming through. I can't